I am the greatest.
I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
You won't do shit. Just stick and move. And just waking you up and saying, now stick and move. Keep your hands up. Welcome to a new episode of the Stick and Move podcast. I'm your host, Trey, and today I am calling out one of our commenters, one of our sincere followers of the channel. A few episodes back, I did the top 3 80s boxers, and I have my number one, Sugar Ray Leonard. And one of our commenters, one of our loyal listeners, by the name of the famous Akeem McCall. I tend to call him out a lot because he loves to give me a good challenge, and I love that about our channel and our subscribers. They're always challenging me, phenomenal historians. And he said that he had a hard time putting Sugar Ray Leonard as the number one 1980s boxer. He actually had him, if I'm not mistaken, number 8 pound for pound of all time. And he told me that he believes Sugar Ray Leonard lost to Tommy the Hitman Hearns in that second fight. He actually believes that Tommy the Hitman Hearns was winning the first fight before the TKO in that 14th round. Now, because of that, I went back and I rewatched the fight and I scored Tommy the Hitman Hearns versus Sugar Ray Leonard. And you may be surprised by my score of that fight as I'm about to break down every round. So before I get to showing you guys my scorecard, I want to give you guys a little brief history about my relationship with this fight. Now, the first fight happened in 1981, as I just mentioned before. Sugar Ray Leonard, you can say what you want about that first fight back in 81, but, I've actually, I recall people always stating, and I've seen that fight numerous times. I'm kind of leaning to what the famous Akeem McCall was saying, that Hitman Hearns was winning that fight going into that 14th round, as he had those electric middle rounds that Tommy the Hitman Hearns was known for having. And then Sugar Ray Leonard would catch him with that phenomenal hook, just wobbling Hitman Hearns into the ropes and the fight being over. Now, they wouldn't even fight till 8 years later because Sugar Ray Leonard had a finicky career going into the 80s. I would say it kind of remind me a little bit, coincidentally, because they do compare him all the time to Floyd Mayweather, in the sense that, remember Floyd Mayweather, he was in trouble with the law a lot, so he had to take a little bit extra time. He flirted with retirement all the time as well. Same thing with Sugar Ray Leonard, but kind of the opposite sense. Sugar Ray Leonard was up there as a top personality of the 80s, where the 1980s was magnified with phenomenal athletic talent. There was Magic Johnson with his phenomenal smile. Sugar Ray Leonard had a great smile too. I know it's kind of weird for me to say, but these great personalities that were electrifying the sports world. Bo Jackson, Ken Griffey Jr., of course, Michael Jordan. I could just name a few. Carl Lewis of the 80s and the Olympics, and track and field. I could go on and on. And Sugar Ray Leonard, I guess you can say that he just had options. In a simpler way, why get your face punched in when you can just make as much money being a personality, announcing fights, and being a great ambassador to the sport of boxing? And that's what Sugar Ray Leonard did. So he was always on and off, taking long breaks into the 80s. Sugar Ray Leonard, he just had his fight with Hagler, and he wanted to finish the rematch that everybody was asking for against Tommy the Hitman Hearns, and that's what he would give the people. That's why I had Sugar Ray Leonard, my number one of the 80s, because he fought everybody. He went up to go fight Hagler. By the way, Hagler was at that fight. Duran was at that fight commentating for the Spanish audience. And he took on everybody. He'll fight Duran after this fight too, by the way. And that was the famous third fight that people didn't really want to watch anymore. That was the unanimous decision 12-round fight. This is when 12-round fights were becoming a little bit more common, going away from the 15-rounders that Sugar Ray Leonard had with Hearns. But going back to my relationship with this fight. Look, I was an 8-year-old kid when this fight happened, and I was already deep into boxing. I've told you all my history many times. Go ahead and watch the early on episodes. I've been deep into boxing my entire life. And what I recall as an 8-year-old kid that I loved about watching this fight, that was always a constant memory to me, even to this day. Even when I was rewatching this fight, it just threw me back into this nostalgic realm when I recalled for the first time in my career kind of rooting against Tommy the Hitman Hearns for the first time for the dumbest of reasons. As you guys know, Tommy the Hitman Hearn is my all-time favorite boxer. Even when I was a kid, I loved his style, his aggressive style. He always came out to fighting when he would fight the biggest fights from the start of the ring, as you've seen throughout his career. His most iconic one with Hagler, of course, and even his first fight with Leonard, and eventually with Duran, all the big fights that he was in, he would always come out blazing, and at times it would cost him. He even kind of developed, in my opinion, a little bit of a glass chin because he was willing to go all in into those bouts and be forced to open himself up and get caught from time to time, as we know throughout his career. Uh, but the reason why I was still going for Hearns. I remember going to watch that fight. I was still rooting for Hearns. He had those iconic Crunk Jim yellow trunks. But Sugar Ray Leonard comes out with that red stripe with white, that red and white stripe trunks that I remember thinking were like candy canes. And even to this day, I affiliate. Every time I see a candy cane at the store or when it's Christmas season, I always look at them. And I just think of Sugar Ray Leonard, coincidentally. And I don't know, it just as a kid, I guess as an 8-year-old kid, it gave me some kind of connection. And when the fight came out into a draw, those that don't know, uh, I wasn't really mad. I wasn't really upset. I would get upset when Hearns would lose into his bouts. I mean, it was just crushing for me because he was arguably my favorite athlete of the 80s, especially in the late 80s when everybody was coming around. Jordan was making a name for himself in basketball. Baseball was turning that corner. I was a huge Nolan Ryan fan as he was growing into late in his career and still dominating, Wayne Gretzky and stuff. Sports was fun in the 80s and early 90s. And Hitman Hearns for me was one of the top of my favorite athletes. But going into this fight and seeing Sugar Ray Leonard, I don't know if that was a marketing thing or what, but his trunks pulled me in as an 8-year-old kid. Call me childish if you want, but that's my connection to this fight. Now, interestingly enough, this fight later on will be dubbed the war. And look, this fight was interesting because Tommy the Hitman Hearns had been struggling his past few fights. He had just got into a 12th round banger where he would go down in the 4th round against James Kinchin. And, the fight before that, he would lose to Iran Barkley. Talk about a clash of styles, the styles made for each other, where Barkley just tore him pretty much into pieces, knocking him out with a TKO in that 3rd round, losing again to Iran Barkley 4 to 5 years later. But Hearns has, considering that his last fight before he fought Iran Barkley, where he lost, was to Hagler, people, he grew a mystique about him. He was the boxer that nobody wanted to fight because of his awkward length, his awkward style, and that killer, sensational cobra jab that most boxers did not want to deal with. But when watching this fight against Sugar Ray Leonard that led to a draw, going for that WBC super middleweight, WBO super middleweight, this fight would come down to a draw where the 3 judges, one judge, Tom Kazmarek, would give Sugar Ray Leonard the nod at 113, 112. Then the second judge, Dalby Shirley, would have it at a draw at 112, 112. And Jerry Roth going into it and giving the win or the fight to Tommy the Hitman Hearns at 112, 113. Now, if you go into boxrec.com, you go into the Wikipedia of this fight, the fans have graded this fight 115-111 for Tommy the Hitman Hearns. And I got to be honest with you, that is not the fight I saw. Now, I'm going to show you guys my scorecard right here. And I'm going to break this down because it was a 12-round fight into 4 rounds each. I'm going to give you all my score, the total score. And we're going to break down each round going from the first 4 to the 8 to the 12th round. And guys, I had it 113 for a draw as well. Now I know what you guys are thinking. What the hell? You're supposed to I guess you can say I know a lot of people because I've had draws on when I've done these kind of episodes before, and I've been called a coward for it. But guys, I'm telling you guys, when I'm watching these fights, I'm scoring it round for round. I'm not watching with volume. I don't want to be persuaded by the judges or by the PA guys. I only turn on the PA when the fight's over and they're talking to the fighters after the fight because I want to know the emotions and the details and you know the craziness that happens in every after fight, no matter how big or how small. So these are my sincere scores. I mean, if you guys see, let's talk about the first 4 rounds. So into that third round, I don't want to break down that third round, but I did get that third round at 10-8 to Tommy the Hitman Hearns because that's where he would knock him down. But before I break down that knockdown, I want to talk about that first, second round because to me, yes, it was different. Normally Tommy the Hitman Hearns, when it came to these big fights, he comes out leaping with that first round. You saw it against Hagler, you saw it against Duran, you saw it throughout his career. With the bigger the name, the faster he wanted to get the knockout done. That was his style. That's what made him so appealing as a fighter. That's what made me love him, and to this day is my favorite. He is my favorite fighter of all time because he was so aggressive. But this fight, it's kind of like he learned a lesson. I think he saw Sugar Ray Leonard do what he did against Marvin Marvelous Hagler and Tommy the Hitman Hearns, also coming off a loss against Barkley and a tough fight against Kenshin where he went down, wanted to fight a different, smarter fight. And I'll be honest with you guys, I kind of liked it except for the later rounds, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But it just felt like within that first round, Hearns was dictating the pace. Leonard was going side to side, using the ring for defense and hardly trying to stick and move or jab. Hearns, in my opinion, just kind of showed the judges that, you know what, I'm going to stand firm. I'm going to stand tall. I'm not going to get into a phone booth, but I'm going to use my weapon and use that jab. And it felt going into that second round, Hearns would start to connect with about 115 or 120, 115 left in that round, while Sugar Ray Leonard was just swinging and missing. It kind of felt like the size of Tommy the Hitman Hearns was bothering Sugar Ray Leonard, and his long 74-inch jab was just too much. It kind of felt like Sugar Ray Leonard just felt the difference between fighting a 5'9", 5'10", maybe a 6-foot fighter against a tall, lankier boxer with such a stiff, divisive jab. By the way, guys, I'm still in Manila. There's a lot of background noise, so if you guys hear noise in the background, I do apologize. But I gave that second round to Tommy the Hitman Hearns because it was interesting because just about 5 seconds or just before the bell, I would even say about 2 seconds before the bell, you see Sugar Ray Leonard switch to the southpaw stance, and the second he switches, Hearns catches him, even wobbling him going into his corner. And at that time, I was like, oh boy, something's going to happen going into that third round, which eventually something did happen into that third round. And like I mentioned before, at this point, I already had it 20-18 going to the third round for Hearns. And, within the first minute and a half, Hearns would land a stiff jab, shaking the core of Sugar Ray Leonard. and he would just become more relentless as the round went on. About 120, about 15 seconds later, Sugar Ray Leonard would land a combination, doing like this little shimmy when Tommy the Hitman Hearns would do a shimmy in response and then land a quick right. Then Hearns would land another right. Leonard would fall, hitting the canvas, and Richard Steele would start his count. Sugar Ray Leonard would get right back up, and Tommy the Hitman Hearns, it reminded me of when he fought Hagler, when he would just get Hagler right into the ropes and start throwing haymakers. But Sugar Ray Leonard, his elusiveness, his speed, his willing, his the way he knew how to use the ring and go side to side, was able to survive that round. But it was clear that he was hurt, as Tommy the Hitman Hearns would edge him out in that third round. Actually, not edge him out, but take over that fight. And at that point, it looked like Hearns was well on his way. Now, going into that fourth round, I was kind of let down because I thought Hearns, or the Hearns I knew, would go in and try to go out for the kill. But it kind of felt like one of those rounds where where Sugar or Tommy Hearns was kind of, he wanted to bring that discipline back, and there was not really much of a show. Sugar Ray Leonard would pick up a little bit of the pace, just to show a little bit more light, because he knew he was down in the cards. But Tommy the Hitman Hearns, I decided, did not do enough, as he was still trying to keep the pace, trying to establish that jab. But the energy felt like, or the urgency I felt, was going to Sugar Ray Leonard, as he was coming in and out with his combinations. He wasn't really landing nothing of significance, but I saw the energy, I saw the tempo being picked out. So that's why I gave Sugar Ray Leonard that fourth round. Now, by this time of the fight, you got a sense into the crowd. I got a sense as I was watching that this fight was going to be long from over. Yes, I already knew the history. I already knew that Leonard went down later on in the fight as well. But I felt that Sugar Ray Leonard, because he was left off the hook in that fourth round, was going to bring back a little bit of life. As Sugar Ray Leonard, like I said, in going into that fourth round, he felt the sense of urgency, in my opinion. But I got to give Hearns a lot of credit here. Sugar Ray Leonard would start to show the vintage Sugar Ray what he is all about, what he did to Hagler, what he did to Duran, why he was already a Hall of Famer going into this portion of his career, coming out of retirement and finishing the business of what the fans wanted, and fighting these legends, fighting fighters nobody wanted to fight. You saw vintage Sugar Ray Leonard coming out into this fifth round, and I got to give it to Hearns. He just showed that heart, like I just said. And here we are, 35, 36 years later after that fight. And here I am thinking, I remember this. I remember the tide turning in this fifth round, where Sugar Ray Leonard, because he had such a quick and fast start to that fifth round, was starting to take control. And I remember thinking then, as I did now, as I watched the fight recently, I remember thinking to myself, this is usually when Hearns goes down in his other fights. When he gets caught and he goes down, he had that body language, like he's one exhausted, one that he's dazed, but he survives that fifth. And then going into that sixth round, Hearns comes out, I think, wanting to show the judges that he wasn't hurt. And what I mean by that is that he comes out swinging his left arm, his left elbow, like he was rocking the baby, like he's rocking a baby, or like the Popeye swinging forearm. I think he was doing that to display to the crowd, display to the judges, that he was not hurt in that previous round. As I felt that Sugar Ray Leonard kind of took the gas off the pedal. Look, I know, as a boxing fan, I want to see the knockout. I want to see it going for the kill. But there's a lot of strategy. A lot of these legends, you have a Hall of Fame lasting career because of strategy. And this was one of those fights. Yes, Sugar Ray Leonard, in my opinion, should have came out in that sixth round and just gone for the kill. but it kind of like it felt like to me he took his foot off the gas as they both were kind of using the ring for space, using the ring for defense. And I saw that Tommy the Hitman Hearns kind of used that round, to recalibrate from being from not almost not surviving that fifth, as I gave that round also to Sugar Ray Leonard. And into that seventh round, guys, Hearns would hurt Leonard within that first 30 seconds of the round, landing a nasty left hook. But as the round continued to go on, Sugar Ray Leonard would close the round strong. And that seventh round, I almost considered giving it to Sugar Ray Leonard because he did end the round pretty well. But I thought that sensational flurry that Tommy the Hitman Hearns came out in that first minute was enough to weigh me. So I gave that seventh round to him. Now, going into that eighth round, you know, it kind of had that feel of the first round. The crowd was had that tension that we're about to enter the championship part of this fight, the championship rounds, and it just felt that Tommy the Hitman Hearns and Sugar Ray Leonard were kind of measuring each other as they were peppering each other with the jab, and Sugar Ray Leonard was going doing his side to side defense that he always does, always light on his feet. And although there was a point with a minute 10 into that fight where Hearns lands a vicious right, that's pretty much all I saw from him. You know, it's interesting because when I see this fight, it kind of, I know I refer Ali a lot in this fight. I get in trouble because I talk about Muhammad Ali a lot in this podcast. But it kind of reminded me of of Thriller Manila in the sense that Muhammad Ali, in my opinion, in that fight, he adopted this rope a dope that he got from the fight before with George Foreman, and I believe he wanted to use that against the relentless peekaboo style of Joe Frazier, because I honestly think Muhammad Ali could have landed that jab anytime he wanted. As you saw early in the first three rounds of that fight of the Thriller Manila, Muhammad Ali wobbled him so many times. Joe Frazier, okay, maybe twice or three times into that early part of the fight because of that jab. I honestly thought that Ali could have ended the fight early. But he does that rope a dope for the entire middle portion of the fight to Joe Frazier, and the rest of that fight. I kind of felt the same with Tommy the Hitman Hearns at this point. I felt that Tommy the Hitman Hearns, if he would have been establishing that jab more often, because you saw later on in this fight, going into that 11th round where Sugar Ray Leonard would go down again. I'll get to that in a second. That jab was starting to bother Sugar Ray Leonard. Sugar Ray Leonard's face was already starting to get puffy. But Tommy the Hitman Hearns would just he would land the jab and get away from it for like half the round throughout this fight, and then do it again. And I'm like, you got to keep punching that. You got to keep establishing that jab. Now, I also kind of consider this where Sugar Ray Leonard kind of reminded me of Floyd Mayweather, where people didn't really fear Floyd Mayweather's jab, as people always felt that the big heavy thumpers that Floyd Mayweather fought, that they would go right through Floyd Mayweather's jab in defense and just pound him, and that never happened because obviously Floyd Mayweather had a lot of sting in that jab, enough of a sting to keep boxers at bay, i.e., like he did to Canelo and other great thumping boxers that he would fight in his career. Sugar Ray Leonard, in my opinion, that jab that he continuously landed as well on Tommy the Hitman Hearns was enough to keep Tommy the Hitman Hearns at bay to where he couldn't pepper Sugar Ray Leonard to death with that Cobra jab that we all know and love from Tommy the Hitman Hearns. It just felt like Hitman was either exhausted, which he later admits that. Well, they both later admit that this is one of those fights where they thought that if they would have gone 15 rounds, they probably never would have survived due to exhaustion. But what I saw in that 8th round, going into the championship rounds, I think Hitman Hearns missed an opportunity. If he would have kept on being relentless and continuously peppering Sugar Ray Leonard with this fight, I think that fight could have been over. But I saw going of the first 8 rounds, I wasn't seeing two versions of the Hitman that I love: the relentlessness and him establishing that jab as he would get away from it later on in this fight. Now, let's talk about those championship rounds because they were heavy. As you guys see here on my card, I gave the 9th and 10th round also to Sugar Ray Leonard. It's so interesting because that 10th round, Leonard dominated. Leonard would land these combinations on those first 30 seconds and dominate that 10th round. As you guys see on my scorecard, I had him winning. Now, Leonard, I think he want because you guys saw in that 10th round that Hearns was just so sluggish, and I was like, "Come on, man, show me some life, show me some life." And here comes Leonard right at the start of the 11th round. Leonard darts across the ring, and then Richard Steele, one of the most iconic boxing judges of all time, pushes him off. I'm like, "What is happening? Let him go in." But anyways, going into that 11th round, he is broken up by by Richard Steele for some strange reason, and then Hearns would land this phenomenal right hand combo, knocking Leonard down, in my opinion, catching him by surprise. The fans were off their feet at this point, and the fight felt like it was changing. Leonard was obviously hurt. It was an exciting round as they kept on going back and forth, as Leonard knew at that point, because we all know the legacy of that fight, where it was always where it was already established, especially that first time when Sugar Ray Leonard heard from Angelo Dundee that he was losing that fight to Hearns. I felt that in that 11th round, after being knocked down, that Leonard would fight back, try to get the point back, end the round strong. But Hearns had a little bit more life. As for me, I could have had it a 9-8 round, but I gave the 10-8 to Tommy the Hitman Hearns because, yes, he had that early knockout. I just thought with the way he came out, with that sensational combinations, that first minute of that 11th round, that Tommy the Hitman Hearns, that was enough to dominate, to win the round, and eventually keep the point to keep it 10-8. Tell me what you guys think in the comment. Do you think that 11th round was a 10-8 round, or should it have been a 9-8 because of the late comeback by Sugar Ray Leonard? Did Sugar Ray Leonard do enough to maybe get that point back and even out that round? Now, let's talk about that infamous 12th round. Now, it's interesting because this is it. This is a legacy fight. Sugar Ray Leonard knows it. Tommy the Hitman Hearns knows it. And that first minute, it was interesting because that first minute, Hearns came out like a new man, like he was resting the entire fight for that 12th round. We later on found out that Hearns he just had that late surge, and he came out with looking like the vintage Jerry Curl, Tommy the Hitman Hearns that I fell in love with back in the mid 80s. And even to this day, where he comes out with those hellacious, using that long jab, that cobra jab, those strikes, those body hooks, those hooks. And I don't even know how Sugar Ray Leonard survived it, because that second minute of that final round, now Sugar Ray Leonard turns it around. It felt like a Rocky movie, and he ends up dominating, saving him as I did the count and making this fight a draw of 113 on my scorebook. Look, guys, this was a tough fight for me to score. I know me having a draw is kind of chickening out, but that's what I got. I mean, look, I want to give Tommy the Hitman Hearns the win. He was my all-time favorite, but he still is to this day. But I had to call it like I see it. I had a 113, 113. Guys, tell me in the comments what you think about the score. You guys go ahead, watch the fight. I'll put the link into the description so you guys can watch your own version. Tell me your score of the fight. I am curious because this is a controversial one. And I'm really happy that the famous Akeem McCall, you put me onto this. I want to thank you for that. We're going to leave it here, guys. Go ahead. Go ahead and like and subscribe. All that good stuff. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the love that you guys have for me. And until next week or until our next episode, don't forget to stick and move, baby.
I am the greatest. I wish I was